Welcome back. The global economic meltdown has affected China in many aspects, but for ordinary Chinese, the greatest pain has been in the job market. The growing army of unemployed mainly consists of migrant workers from the countryside. China's rural population numbers 900 million. The southern part of China, where many labor-intensive factories are located, is the front line affected by global financial crises.
Zhang Chuanshou is the chief executive of a labor dispatch company in Shenzhen. Training like this is part of the daily routine.
How to work away from home. What kind of qualities do you need? We're here to earn money.
These migrant workers are from different parts of China. Chuanshun hires them and then sends them to different factories, mostly in southern China. A migrant worker himself, Zhang set up his business in 2001. It started with some 40 workers and took off in 2003 with the manufacturing boom. Zhang established a network with many factories and sent workers by the hundreds to each of his contractors. With millions of migrant workers looking for jobs each year, Zhang's force reached 18,000 in 2008. But when he started working toward the goal of doubling the number in 2009, Zhang and his workers felt the chill of the global financial crisis. His workforce is now down to 5,000, and nearly 1,000 of them are still waiting for work.
Last November, when manufacturing orders of many factories dropped sharply, a lot of my workers lost their jobs and came back to me. I had to ask them to go back home well before Spring Festival. Nothing like this ever happened in the past 5 years.
Government figures show about 20 million migrant workers have lost their jobs due to the global crisis. That means the number of unemployed migrants in China is nearly equal to the entire population of Australia. Unemployment was a top concern during this year's NPC and CPPCC sessions.
Economic growth is a key factor in promoting employment. China's economic growth is slowing down due to the international financial crisis. Many problems have risen in employment. The current job situation is severe.
Most migrant workers lack technical skills. The lack of technical labor forces has been a long-standing issue impeding the upgrade of China's manufacturing industry. Working in labor-intensive industries is another factor making them vulnerable, as those industries in China are much related to trade volume.
On the macroeconomic level, securing economic growth means securing employment. The government's target of 8% GDP growth this year is an impressive figure against the backdrop of the global financial crisis. But for a country with 1.3 billion people, 1% of GDP growth would mean millions of jobs.
We will do everything in our power to stimulate employment. We will make full use of the role of the service sector, labor-intensive industries, small and medium-sized enterprises, and the non-public sector of the economy in creating jobs.
The Chinese government will inject 42 billion yuan, or $6.14 billion to stimulate employment, its biggest investment in that sector to date. Major tasks include facilitating the employment of university graduates, expanding employment opportunities for migrant workers in cities while stabilizing their existing job options, improving public services for employment, and supporting individuals in starting their own businesses. The government has offered loans, tax cuts or exemptions, and speedier permit approvals to encourage those returnees to become their own boss back home. Some, like Li Zhichun and his wife Deng Linchui, have chosen this option. The former migrant workers in Shanghai are now raising geese in Anhui province. Each day, they feed thousands of birds. Li and his wife are part of a growing number of migrant workers looking for opportunities in the countryside.
A migrant worker has to work really hard outside and be an honest man. Then you might grab an opportunity and become successful. But I still think the rural area is a broader world and full of potential.
Provinces are stepping up support as well. Hunan will extend 1.5 billion yuan in loans to some 100,000 businesses to create about 1 million jobs. And it's subsidizing a project to retrain 2 million migrants. Skills will help migrant workers find new opportunities in the job market and secure long-term employment.
If we use some money from the 4 trillion yuan stimulus program to train migrant workers and other labor forces, it will turn this economic crisis into an opportunity in developing China's human resources. A skilled labor force for China will provide the basis for the upgrade of its manufacturing industry and sustainable development in the future.
For ordinary Chinese, government plans to invest heavily in employment projects and social security is welcome news. But until the benefits materialize, these migrant workers are in for a hard time. Many will have to depend on people like Zhang Chuanshou. He says placing his workers is much more than a business now, it's a responsibility.
If I didn't take my workers in, they'd have a harder time finding jobs on their own. Then they might get into trouble. After all these years, I feel that I have a role to play for my workers. Although it's hard now, I'll do my best to make my company survive.
In late February, good news came from Dalian. A food factory there would hire 600 of Zhang's workers. For these workers, it means not just a living, but hope for a better life and future.
The millions of struggling migrant workers are among China's most vulnerable people at present. Fortunately, they've got the attention of the entire country. And as analysts point out, as more and more government measures take effect, a crisis may turn into opportunities. It could be a time for China to build a skilled labor force and to reform its social security system. Coming up next, Barbie turns 50. You're watching World Insight. We'll be right back.